Before you quit your job to go full in on your startup, be sure to validate your idea. You want to validate early and you want to validate often. One great way to do that is to post your idea on a Reddit thread, our startup ideas, then maybe I'll pick it up and give it a review. In this video, I'm going to look at a couple ideas that users have posted recently, and give my thoughts as to how I would tackle an MVP and maybe even dive into some tech. I'm also going to remind you to vote on November 8th. Very critical. All right, let's roll the intro and then we'll talk about some startups. All right, Porta Potty subscription service. Okay, the crux of this is basically you have a premium Porta Potty service. Now they're suggesting a $10 a month fee. I don't know if this makes sense as a subscription service. You don't necessarily plan in advance where you're gonna need to go and whether or not one of these is gonna be there. But if we just take the idea of a premium toilet service. Now, absolutely, I think this could work. There are lots of other areas where we have free and paid services. Thinking about the airport, and you have now the Clear service where you can pay extra and they get you through the line faster, etc. And obviously, if you make it simple to sign up and pay, and maybe just take cash or card at the actual site, there are tons of times, concerts or whatnot, where there is always a line for the toilet where people would get in the line to pay. Now, it opens up a lot of questions vis-a-vis society, right? I think this is something that absolutely could make money, and I'll maybe return to that later. But it's important to think about what is the impact of this and what is the impact of the things we build on society as a whole. A service like a premium tier toilet would definitely add to the stratification and the classism of society, which is already a problem now. You can maybe even phrase this as the gentrification of porta potties. But on the other hand, it is supply and demand, right? If there is a need for this service and people are willing to pay, especially, when you gotta go, you gotta go. So I could absolutely see people in these situations willing to pay more for the premium service. The problem then becomes, what is its impact on the free service? If we're looking at something like a concert, where theoretically setting up the concert, they included the facilities as part of the price. If too many people start moving to the premium service, is that going to inherently decrease the availability of the free service? And before long, using the premium service is all but a necessity, right? If the demand for the free, or not the demand, but if the usage of the free service goes down, and then years from now, concert venues or wherever these are going, start to feel that they can get away with only providing one free porta potty, have you actually done a net benefit or a net harm to society? And I think there's potential for it to go either way, right? I think one thing it would come down to is competition. If the venues have effectively a monopoly on the conditions of a concert, as they kind of do now with the whole Ticketmaster fiasco, and if you haven't seen John Oliver's piece on that, do yourself a favor, check it out. Ideally, capitalists certainly profess that the market is going to find the balance. Given equal opportunity for competition and given consumers who have appropriate knowledge, they will find the balance of how many premium porta potties versus free porta potties makes for an ideal situation for society for a particular venue. However, in the absence of a market with a truly level playing field, I believe we all bear some responsibility to at least consider these types of things. Not necessarily specifically about toilets all the time, but in general. Now, this reminds me of a conversation I had with some friends in post-COVID San Francisco, which is in a bit of a negative feedback loop, as especially in the downtown business area where you have all these office buildings that are mostly empty because everyone's working from home. And so the businesses that catered to that population, right, the little corner shops and whatnot that relied on the office workers for lunch or whatever, now they have no customers. And so those places are closing as well. And this is very bad for the neighborhood because there are people who live there. It's not just office buildings, but it's not enough people living there, I suppose, to justify the cost of these shops being open. There's actually an Amazon Go shop in that area that closes at 2 p.m. Like, seriously? Like, nobody gets done at work at 5 and then needs to grab something from the store? Like, it's nuts. So it's bad for these neighborhoods because they don't have kind of the essentials, or at least the niceties that kind of make it a nice place to live. And theoretically, the people who live there may be interested in funding some of these local businesses to stay open, but it depends on how you phrase it. One option is for the shops, obviously, to charge an insane amount for goods, right? If you want to come get a cup of coffee, it's like $20, right? But no one wants to pay, like, no one's going to pay that for a cup of coffee, right? So you can't always like hide and bake in these costs. However, if you had an option for like crowdsourcing funding for shops that you just want to have in your neighborhood, right? And maybe you're not going to go there all the time, and maybe they don't have to be making an insane profit. But if enough people in the neighborhood want to become a patron of these shops and businesses to keep them open for the life, for the feel of walking around and being able to stop in, have a cup of coffee, do some co-working with people, whatever. It might be a more enjoyable experience for the potential customers to kind of be a patron of these places and maybe, you know, put their name up on the wall or whatever, instead of needing to raise the price insanely for goods and services. And then you have the added benefit of other people passing by, you know, they will actually shop there, right? Because if you raise your prices too high, you get again into kind of a negative feedback loop of everyone sees the prices are so high, they rely instead on delivery and other things, so you widen the area of stores you're competing with. And so then what? You have fewer customers, you need to charge more to survive. So anyway, this model isn't necessarily working. So it'd be interesting to explore, especially for neighborhoods and places where the people living there have a vested interest in these local shops thriving, finding other methods of funding these things and keeping kind of these institutions alive. Taking it back now to the Porta Potty. One way I can see this working is crowdfunding to bring that Porta Potty there, right? If you know you're going to have an event, if you provide a website in advance, maybe somehow you get a hold of the email of everyone there and you're like, hey, here's the current situation of toilets there. And that's provided by the venue as is. And then you say, okay, if we can get, I don't know what the cost of a toilet trailer is, but if we can get $10,000 raised, we'll bring this premium toilet there, and everyone who donated, I don't know, you pre-buy a spot or whatever, you get to come into the special line to use that toilet, and you know it's going to be there for that event. That in a way kind of decouples you from relying on the venues. Obviously you have to, you know, form some sort of partnership with them, but theoretically they're already in the business of providing facilities and making sure that there's enough there for everybody and that people aren't so upset by the venue that they never come back. And so you really want to make it like a premium upgrade. Saying that, I think you're gonna run into trouble with the venues themselves undercutting you, because it's much easier for them to build or to bring in a kind of permanent fixture and then also charge a premium than to pay you to bring these in or to manage them or whatever. So maybe you just go with that, right? Like there are already porta potty businesses, right? So maybe if you are just providing the infrastructure, what's the word I'm looking for? Equipment that venues can lease or purchase that handles the registration, either you have a card reader on the door where you can charge people, $10 to use the John, or you have some sort of QR code with an app where they can go, and because you talked about having it like a subscription service, right? And if you just handle that and find some other efficiencies that, because you're managing this for multiple venues around the world, you can do it more efficient than a specific venue, maybe there's something there that you can play with. Obviously, bringing the world more clean toilets, big plus. Good luck to you on that. Okay, spent way more time talking about toilets than I intended to tonight. Let's roll on. Can you validate my startup idea? Let's find out. I am building a website that helps content creators know how much they should be getting paid for promoting other brands on their platform. Okay, so without reading further and thinking like Glassdoor, but for influencers, through my website, influencers can see how much other influencers and your location are paid for brand promotions. So it'll also help brands get an estimate on how much they should pay. I'm following this build your startup in public strategy, love it, for validation. So I'm curious what the business is. How does Glassdoor make money? The business model of Glassdoor is based on selling premium packages to employers, so in your case, the brands wanting to do the promotion. The company makes money through job postings, employer branding, and the advertisement of job listings. Okay, so theoretically, you have a website where you can connect influencers with brands, and kind of the hook of the website is you add some transparency to the deals, right? So that both sides of the equation are operating with more transparency. It's a little more of a level playing field, etc. I like it. I think it's valid. The question is, what is the competition and what already exists? So you would definitely want to do your research on that. First thing that's coming up is a lot of articles on how to do this. So obviously there's some opportunity with SEO to beat these articles in terms of the top results for these things, but there are things, okay, findmyinfluencer.com, influencer.com, but okay. So this is already a business that's out there, right? And there are probably many of these. So the question then becomes, how are you going to differentiate yourself? Maybe it's the transparency factor that works for Glassdoor, right? You would need to see what the transparency level is on these other sites. Maybe that niche is already taken. I don't know. But absolutely do your research, figure out what your competition is before you start to build anything. But love that you're doing this in public. That's definitely the way to go. Now, for something like this, let's say you do the research and it pans out, right? Big assumptions, but let's roll with it. Obviously, you would want to validate the idea, put up a landing page, see if anyone signs up before you build anything. Sure. Honestly, like if I were starting this, I would do it super simple, super labor intensive, but that's how maybe you're going to get off the ground. Is start with maybe the branding, give them just a text box like what type of people, what type of influencers are you looking for? You read that, you go on a hunt and you find influencers and you say, hey, I have these opportunities, right? Obviously you need some way of getting in touch with these influencers. Hopefully you have some networking going on or whatever, you have some connections, because then you're able to provide value, right? So maybe you didn't build something, you could spend a lot of time building and iterating on the right factors or categories to filter by or whatever. But if you start just open-ended and effectively doing this personally, right? So you have the brand, they come to you, they say, hey, we're looking for an influencer, we want X, Y, and Z. And you don't need a limited computer system between you and that conversation. And then you go on a hunt and you find those people. And once you've done that enough, then you start to get a feel for what are the pieces of this process that I can automate. Obviously, at the same time, you're building up your networks on both sides, which even if the business collapses is probably going to benefit you in the long run. So that's great. And you're able to get actual customers right away, right? And it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to be a lot of hustle. But on the other hand, there's minimal risk, right? So you don't need to spend months building something, even something basic, and try to get a bunch of influencers to sign up to promote and then try to get a bunch of brands to come on, right? And then it's only going to work if you have critical mass on both sides. So start with the personal approach just super white glove these brands, and that's maybe how I would sell it, right? That I think is a great way to get the ball rolling, build a customer base, build an understanding of what this product really needs to look like and to do to succeed with very minimal upfront investment. Now, because this is supposed to be like a tech vlog, let me talk about that at least a little bit. If I were to build some working version, some MVP of this, I would probably do something like a message board, right? So you have obviously you have both sides. You have the brands coming in, you have the influencers coming in. The brand is going to post the type of influencers they're looking for. Probably they don't need to reveal who they are, but they can identify some key aspects of their brand, like, okay, we're in athletics or we're in blah, blah, blah. They can put a bid. Maybe you have some sort of blind auction. I don't know. Similarly, you have influencers who are able to browse the opportunities, maybe also post their own profiles with tags and classification that the brands could search through. Maybe the influencers are able to put some target packages, similar how you see on Fiverr or whatnot, like sponsor a video for $1,000 or whatever. So I probably start with that. You're just helping these people meet and talk to each other. You stay out of the transactions, at least to begin with, but then eventually, once it's starting to gain popularity, you have more time or money to invest, you can start becoming a middleman of these transactions, take the money from the brand, effectively hold it until the influencer delivers and the brand agrees, and then you can release that, similar to how something like Fiverr works. So take a look at how they do that. So actually building out that first version of this, again, just where you're facilitating brands posting, influencers posting their profiles, making it searchable, filterable, etc. Sending messages on the site maybe. That's relatively simple. You're gonna need to have great UX. You can probably get something working in a month, if not faster. But again, that's not gonna be the hardest part of this. If you are going that route, the hardest part is getting critical mass on both sides. So you need to figure out your marketing strategy. How are you bringing the brands to the site? How are you bringing the influencers to this site? Again, I might think of kind of a white glove approach where you're just selling the service to the brands. Come to me, we'll find the influencers with or without the tech to begin with. Now, because you talked about this transparency thing, that is another way to go about it. If you are trying to build a hub for influencers and then maybe letting the brands get in touch with them is not the core feature for them, right? If you are building other things to facilitate these influencers meeting each other, learning how to be a better influencer, etc. Maybe you launch and it's only available to micro influencers to start things out. You're probably only going to get smaller influencers to begin with anyway, so might as well make them feel exclusive. And as long as if you're able to find something to deliver value to them, and then you bring in, hey, we can also hook you up with promotion opportunities, that might be one way to go about it. Okay, I feel like I went all over the place with this one, so I apologize for that. It's a great idea. There are already players in this space, so you're gonna need to do your market research, figure out what your unique selling factor is, and then go from there. So, best of luck, Silent Samurai. All right, that's gonna be it for me tonight. As always, thank you for watching. If there are aspects of this that you want to see more of, go deeper into the tech, go deeper into the business, or less of, let me know in the comments so I can tailor this to you. And of course, if you have an idea for a startup that you want me to discuss, leave it below. You can be a link to a Reddit post or whatever, and I'll be happy to take a look at that and include it in the next video. Don't forget to vote November 8th, and I will see you next time.